Okay, well, welcome to everybody who is tuning in. Um, we're here tonight for Health Promotion and Wellness's Wellness Wednesday. This is our weekly series where we talk about different ways to keep ourselves healthy, um, especially during times right now that can be particularly challenging. So this week we have a really exciting collaboration for you all. We've partnered with the Career Center to help us work through some of the immediate stress that can come with things like searching for a job and going through that job hunt process and application. So we'll go around and I'll introduce ourselves really quick. My name's Peter. I'm a peer health educator at DePaul on the HEAT team, and I'm a junior.
Hello, next, my name is Cindy. I am also a peer health educator, and I am a sophomore.
Hi, everybody. My name is Noel. I am one of the career community advisors. I work specifically with the business, entrepreneurship, and consulting career community.
Awesome. So we're hoping tonight to be able to provide you all with some really useful tools and strategies for not only navigating the job hunt in an effective way, but doing so in a way that's going to keep you healthy and make sure that your mental health and mental well-being is being taken care of as you go through this process, which can undoubtedly be a bit of a challenging process. So to start, we wanted to really pick Kalen's brain and get some of his tips and strategies for going through the job hunt and give you our health and wellness perspective as well. So, Kalen, do you have some want to start with some good tips and strategies for folks to think about as they go through the job hunt?
Sure. So this is one of the most common kind of questions that pops up where the jobs hunt itself is such a stressful kind of time that it can really actually unmotivate a lot of people, because when you have to have so much stress in your life, how are you supposed to be able to actually do it? So a lot of it comes and it can be broken down into a couple different sections. A big piece is, as it says, take one step at a time. Really think about what is the next step that you have to have, making sure that you have all of your different materials kind of in place, like your resume or cover letter. But when it comes with that, don't let that be the only thing that you're doing. I often say that resumes and cover letters and trying to do job applications are like mojo killers. So by that, I mean, you start thinking really negatively about yourself when you are trying to write a resume or trying to fill out a job application, because you're like, well, do I actually have the skills necessary to do this job? Or am I actually able to be successful in landing this job? Or is it just like a lost cause? A lot of times that makes you kind of bring in that self-doubt. So don't let that be the only thing that you're doing. Actually go talk to people. It's surprising how a conversation can be a mojo builder, where you're actually able to talk about yourself, talk about your strengths, suddenly has such a huge impact for you to be able to be positive and happy and be like, wow, I can do that for the job. I totally could be able to land this. So just kind of be thinking about a lot of that when you're initially doing your job search.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a super valuable point to remember. And I think it ties really well into our next point, which is that this process is inherently a bit of a longer process. You know, you're not going to probably apply for a job and get an offer in the same day.
Right.
And it's really important to remember that.
Yeah, in a big way. A lot of times people come in and are like, wow, I didn't realize it was such a process. And it's like, yeah, like you can't just expect it to happen overnight. Typically, it takes between 3 and 6 months to land an internship once you've started like looking. And that really is dependent on like the time of year or what your major is or what you're looking for. So, no, having kind of that thought process in mind kind of makes you normalize it a little bit more and don't expect immediate results. Where you're like, oh, okay, I have a little bit of time to be able to kind of go through this process and um, putting that into play when you come up with your strategy.
It's actually a perfect leeway into our very next point, but just to make sure that you don't just go through the motions. As you said, this process takes a long time, and sometimes because of just how long it is, people might want to just quickly go through the motions and get things over with. Just try to be as productive as maybe we think we are when we submit 40 applications in a week. We're like, yes, we did it. Can you talk a little bit more about how that mindset, might not be the best mindset when we are going through this process?
Yeah, no, I think that that's a really good point right there. That LinkedIn or Glassdoor or Indeed all have these like easy apply buttons where it's like, oh, I just click a button and it automatically sends my information. Great. That can be really beneficial if you know that that job is perfectly for you, right? Because then you can be like, okay, this is going to be this specific job. I can just click apply. But what happens is people stop reading what the job is. They stop looking at like what the company is or what they're doing. So I often think of like job searching kind of like dating, where you can go out onto the street, mask on, hopefully, talk to every single person and ask every single person that you see for a date. Some of them are going to say yes, like sure. Especially if you're paying, they're happy to be able to like go on a date with you. But do you actually want to go on a date with them? Like that is the big comparison that I have, where it's like, well, sure, you could apply for every single company, but do you actually want to work for that company? So it's better not go through the motions and instead take pause and take a little bit more time to research the company, see who they are. Do they match with like what you're looking for? Do they match with your vision and your mission and your brand? And then apply for that. And that will get you a lot further faster because then you don't have to wade through all of the extra of, did I apply for that? I don't remember applying for that. Why would I ever apply for that?
Right.
Yeah. And I think that's a really, really valuable point to remember, because in a good situation, you get a job offer from this place, but that's going to be the place that you're working, and you're going to be spending 40 plus hours a week there working. And so you want it to be a place that you actually want to be spending that much time at. You don't want it to just be some soul-sucking job that doesn't bring you any joy. Like it's really important to make sure that when you look at your jobs, you're making sure you're applying to places that are places you could actually see yourself working.
Right. And it adds so much more stress to it because, like, I am a firm believer that you can do anything for 10 weeks. Like, all of us have had that class where we're like, oh, this class is horrible. But you still get through it and you can do it for 10 weeks. Same thing with an internship. You can totally do it for like 10 weeks and like move on. But if you are like, I can do this and they have a job offer, I'm just going to accept this job offer. If you haven't like pre-prepared in like finding a company that you like, what can happen is that then you end up in a job that you actually really don't like. And then you have to start job searching again in 6 months. Usually I say, give it 6 months, see what happens. Ugh. Then all that anxiety comes back and all of that stress comes back. So it's better to like put a little effort on the front end, find a company that you actually like, and then be able to kind of navigate beyond that.
Exactly. Well, and so once you've found a company that you're really excited about, and you maybe in a good situation, you find 5 or 10 companies that you really love, and you send out applications to all of them. What normally happens to folks when you're applying to 10, 15, 20 places?
Yeah. So don't expect to hear back from everybody. Typically, I think the statistic behind it is that for every 100 applications that you put in, and solely only putting in applications, you usually get 5 responses back. So don't expect to hear from everybody. I know that it causes a lot of people anxiety when it kind of pops up and you are trying to navigate through this and putting in all this time into applications, and then don't get that response back, or you're hoping and you're not hearing from anybody. So don't expect that you're going to get a response back from everybody that you hear. The other piece to it is be proactive. That I hope with whoever is listening, everybody that is listening, that you know that when you're applying is only like a third of the battle. Like 70% of the time, you should be going out and networking and talking to people and being like showing your passionate self, because people are like attracted to passion. So if you're able to do something that you're passionate about, you're going to talk passionately, and then people are going to like you more and like going to want to like interact with you more. So it's going to make it so that you get a much better like opportunity. You're going to get more opportunities faster, because the statistic behind it is that with networking, for every 10 people you talk to, you get 5 responses back. 50% versus 5% is a pretty drastic difference. And you want to make sure that you can do so and like help navigate through a little bit of that like pain or stress that kind of comes through that, and not be so hard on yourself.
That is a perfect leeway, because I feel like a lot of times the job search process is definitely that process of you guessing or second guessing yourself into whether or not you deserve that position, or whether or not you're good enough for that position. Which into the fact that one should know their own strengths. So it's super important, in my opinion, to when you're looking for a job, understand that you are valuable and kind of showcase your strengths. It's might be a bit awkward, I find, sometimes when you're barely getting into it, kind of like feel like you're bragging about yourself in a way, because you're so taught to like be humble, do this, do that. But I think it's important to kind of showcase that there is the idea of you do want to make sure that you know, at least if you're unsure of your insecurities, at least know for sure what your strengths are and kind of rely on those when you're having those times of like second guessing yourself or getting into your head. Do you have any
Yeah.
input on that?
Yeah, totally. I think that that is a huge one that kind of pops up. That the way to kind of really think about your strengths, and actually that sometimes people are like, oh, I don't have any strengths. Like think about all those skills that you've had to do. And one of my favorite examples that I always go through is the server position is the most transferable position that anybody can have, because you have to build so many strengths from that position. So I think of strengths sometimes as skills and skills sometimes as strengths. So if you think about it, you're not just like taking food to like a table. No, you're talking to people and having that conversation and interacting with a multitude of different people. You're doing a lot of priority management where it's like, oh, I have to do this and then this and then this. Those are all skills that an employer hears about. They're like, I need somebody that can do that. So a lot of times thinking of it as like, what did you accomplish in your last positions? What did you accomplish in your student group? When you start thinking of it in terms of that, then suddenly your strengths start popping up, because you're like, oh, I was able to like lead a group of 20 people, and we were able to put on this meeting and have this workshop, and with that we were able to like help this organization do X. That is amazing. That's an awesome strength. And when you're focusing more on that strengths, then a lot of that anxiety doesn't necessarily disappear completely, but it starts to lessen and it becomes more of a side thought instead of like that main whole encompassing idea.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of times when I'm to sort of move forward, when I'm experiencing anxiety or stress, it's because I've come to something that's unknown to me, or that I feel really uncomfortable with because I'm not prepared to deal with it. I don't have the tools to deal with this, or I haven't thought about this before. I've never encountered this situation. Um, and I think this is a really common scenario that folks run into that causes a lot of anxiety and a lot of stress throughout this process of looking for a new job and going to interviews. Do you have any thoughts about that?
Yeah, for sure. I think that this is like a great point. Prepare ahead of time. I also kind of say like set some goals for yourself and set small attainable goals. Whether that's like going into a job interview, it's like, okay, how can I prepare ahead of time? I say create a cheat sheet. You know, they already give you what they're going to talk about because they give you a job description. So read the job description, see what are those strengths that they're expecting somebody to have. How are they expecting that person to be able to do that job? And then you're like, great, they're going to ask a question about that because they're expecting somebody to have good time management. Well, what kind of question could they ask for good time management? Oh, we could maybe ask about a time that they've had to have good time management. Okay, great. Once you check both of those off, now you know the question and you can come up with an example of a time that you had good time management. And then you're prepared because if they ask you a question like that, you can say, oh, this is exactly what they're looking for. I typically say that there's 4 skills that almost any company is going to be looking for you to have once you're outside of school. They're looking for your leadership ability. They're looking for your communication style. They're looking at your problem solving and priority management. And the last one that they are looking for, but don't ask about typically, is your coachability. How quick do you learn something? If you make a mistake and they tell you make a mistake, are you going to keep making that mistake? So those are like really common ones that you can have an example for. But it almost goes beyond that as well, because let's think about networking. That is one of the biggest fears that most people run into. And it's not just students, it's everybody. Everybody's like, networking, ugh. Because they think of it as this like schmooze fest where you're going in and you're just trying to get them to give you a job. Well, instead of thinking of it that way, think of it more as an opportunity to learn about somebody else's story. So if you approach it more as like an exploration and where all you have to do is ask questions, then doesn't become so bad. Because then you can be like, oh, I can go ask somebody like a question about why did they choose their job or why did they go to X company? Like, that's no problem, which goes back to the goals. If you can set a goal of, I'm going to go talk to 3 people, and once I've talked to those 3 people, I'm out of here. I'm done. I can handle it. Great. Go talk to those 3 people. And then if you're like, talk to those 3 people and you're like, I'm done, great. You've achieved your goal, you're good. But if you get there and you get those 3 goals, or you talk to those 3 people, then you can be like, oh, that wasn't so bad. Maybe I can talk to 3 more. And then it's like preparing ahead of time makes it so that then you've kind of given yourself an out and it's okay once you reach that out.
Yeah. And I think a lot of times there is that, which is, I think, also what you're getting at in that once you talk to a few people, oh, maybe I can talk to a few more. I think a big part of it too is the anxiety of anticipation. And actually going out and doing it isn't so bad, but it's that moment leading up to it can be really, really challenging. And we already kind of got into this, but I think it's a really good way to like reframe what networking looks like. It's not this schmooze fest like you said. It's a conversation with other people, and really, I think one of the best ways to go about it is by just being inquisitive and wanting to learn and being interested in what other people do.
Right. And so many people put like undue pressure on themselves when it comes to networking or interviewing, that you're expected to be perfect. Like, I have to be perfect. I have to like show them everything so that they hire me. Your goal is not to be perfect. Your goal is to be you and like show them the best you that there can be. And it's their job to look at the people who are being the best them and choose the one that's going to be a better fit for their company. So if you put the best you out there, then they're going to like, that's all you can do. And like, that's all that will be able to like move you forward. And if it's good fit, it'll give you the job. And it also goes with like, you don't always have to be perfect. So prior to my role as a career advisor, I used to be a recruiter. So I recruited for accounting and finance positions. And I can promise you, the candidates that stuck out to me the most in a positive way were the candidates that weren't always perfect. So, one of like my favorite examples that I use is when somebody asks the question, tell me about a time that you had a difficult conversation with a customer. What did it look like? How did it result? Everybody thinks automatically, oh, what's the perfect example that I handled that customer like a pro? Well, everybody tries to answer it that way. So you're like, oh, I did everything right. The customer left happy. We had all the satisfaction. Great. You're going to leave that room and they're going to be like, wait, was that guy or was that this other person or was that this other person? And you're not going to stand out. But if you instead weren't perfect and walked in and said, I do remember a time that I had like a conversation with a customer. I did everything wrong. Like I raised my voice because I was getting frustrated and anxious, and the customer was really angry, and my manager ended up coming over and having to resolve the situation for me. But this is what I learned. I learned that I'm not going to raise my voice anymore. I don't do this anymore. And you show then through learning growth. And that's what they're looking for. Oh, wow. Like, I remember that guy. He like totally handled the situation wrong, but he learned from it. And with that, we want somebody that can learn on our team. So having not always the perfect answer actually is sometimes a strength and like can be super beneficial.
That I think ties in perfectly to that idea. Interviews are conversations, but also the idea that it's okay to be comfortable being uncomfortable. Kind of you said, some people, you might want always have that perfect answer, but kind of be yourself and be that unique person, because that's really what's going to showcase if you really are a good fit for that company and if that company is a good fit for you. I feel like it's always like people think like you're interviewing to fit into like this box that the company has like made for you. It's like no, like like it is vice versa. Like you are also in the position where you can assess what this company is actually a place that you actually want to work with, if how they have portrayed to you throughout the entire process is actually what they really are. And like to me, that really helped me ease my way of my interviews, because I'm thinking not just I'm like getting tested, but I'm also in this process understanding if I even want to be here to begin with.
Right. Yeah. You are interviewing them as much as they are interviewing you. Yeah, that is a huge point and such a good one to be able to think about to kind of move forward, that you are interviewing them as much as the other one. And you also made another really good point earlier where it's like, it feels awkward to be in that interview. And one of the biggest anxieties that students often talk to me about is the fear of silence. Like, oh my gosh, what about if like they don't like me and they stare at me because I haven't said anything? And what happens is students start rambling because they want to fill that silence. Don't be afraid of the silence. The silence can be a super impactful tool, not only for you, but for the interviewer. Because if you've said your piece, a lot of times they're not talking because they're still writing, because you've said such amazing things, they want to keep writing it. So don't ruin it, just stop talking. Two, your goal is for it to turn into a conversation. So they feel that silence as much as you do. So you want them to talk more and you just talk less. So that silence is going to make them start talking. Makes it so that then, here's the weirdest statistic that you're going to hear all night. The more an interviewer talks, the more they like you. So it's the direct opposite of what you're thinking.
Right.
It's true. If the conversation makes it so that they talk more and they're able to talk about the position or talk about your experience, they're going to like you better. So use that silence to your advantage and don't be afraid of it. Embrace it. Like, oh yeah, I'll say my piece. I'm really good. I feel real comfortable. Now it's your turn. Now it's your turn to talk.
Yeah, I think that's such a valuable point because it's so counter to like what we imagine as being the most effective way about going about an interview. Um, and it's not usually what's portrayed to us as far as interviews go. It's so, to me, that is such a crucial point that's so counter to everything I've learned.
Right. Because you feel like you are supposed to always talk. Like,
Yeah, exactly.
you ask the question and I answer them, and that's the way it's supposed to be. And then,
Yeah,
like, suddenly come to the realization, oh, wait, how am I supposed to know all this information? We're the ones that have the job. Let's talk about the job. That's what we really should be talking about.
exactly. And that ties in so well to our other point about this being it being a conversation. Because if you think about, I mean, I'm sure we can all imagine conversations that we've had where someone is just talking at us and they're awful. They're not fun conversations. And so it's
Right.
like, why would it be different in an interview when we're both looking for someone to fill this job and a job to work in?
Yep, exactly. And that's also an opportunity to really think about, like, how are you showing off your personality during it? So a lot of times during an interview, you often come into a piece where you might not know the answer to something, or you're trying to be such a certain way. So, like, I'll use myself for an example. When I interview, I become like a robot. Like, look how awesome I am. I just can lay out everything. I am an uber professional. But I also have a personality and I humor, but it doesn't come across. And I'm like, crap, how do I do that? So one of my favorite ways is there's an interview question that I absolutely hate. I don't think that they should ask it, and it's starting to change, thankfully. But it's the question, what is your greatest weakness? Ugh, I hate that question. It's horrible. Like, why are you asking that question? And really, it comes down to that's where I can insert my humor. Because where else in life is it okay to ask somebody their greatest weakness? Nowhere.
No.
So I make a joke out of it and I say, my greatest weakness is chocolate cake, like hands down chocolate cake. And they usually laugh just like that and say, okay, but really, and then you go on and answer the question. But that gives me the opportunity to break the uncomfortableness of the interview and become a little bit more comfortable and show off my personality a little bit. It's great to like think of the interview that way of like, okay, we're both uncomfortable because we both aren't supposed to act this way. Figure out ways that you can show off your personality and become comfortable.
Yeah. I think that's such a valuable point too to make, and finding ways to let your like inner self come out and let your true self show is, I think, really valuable. And it, like you said, it's more comfortable, it's more natural when we're able to just be authentic. Like, that's going to be the truest representation of ourselves and likely going to set you apart from other people in that same process. Um, our final piece is just, we want to talk about like generally the stress of the job search. It's a really stressful process, and stress is something that every single person going through it feels in some form or another. Do you have any insights about that?
Yeah. So I think that you hit on a big one right there, that everybody feels it. So it's normal to have stress. An interviewer knows that you're stressed. A fellow networker knows that you're stressed. These are a part where it's normal to have that. So a lot of times those interviewers or those people that you're networking with are going to give you grace. So they're going to know because they're in the same shoes as you. So the biggest thing is like, don't get into your own head. Like, you might be thinking, oh my gosh, they're seeing me sweat. Oh my gosh, they heard me stumble over my words. That's not what they're thinking. They're thinking about themselves. Oh my gosh, he heard me stumbling.
Right.
Oh my gosh, he's up. So, like, give yourself a little bit of grace that it's going to be okay. Other is, we already kind of touched on it once, but prep ahead of time. Like, a lot of times stress starts lowering when people feel comfortable and know what they're talking about or what they want to be doing. So take a little bit of time and and start prepping some of those questions that you could anticipate. Start thinking up stories that you want to talk about. Use like that extra little time to your advantage. And it doesn't have to be in a formalized way where I'm going to sit down and like talk about this. When you're riding the train, when you're going for a walk, think about, if I was like asked this question, what would I say? I had to talk about my project management. How would I talk about that? Oh, I'd probably talk about my classes and how I have 1,000 tests, and write 6 papers, and that's project management. So don't overstress the stress.
I would even add on during this pandemic, there are so many things you can control. For example, your background, if that, just things that, you can get off your plate that will not add to that stress. So making sure you have good connection. Just things you can do ahead of time, like, using cheat sheets, stuff like that, if you are going to get into that stressful mood, knowing kind of what it is that's causing it and kind of finding ways if you can do, again, ahead of time, but just kind of knowing that, there are other avenues you can make sure so that whatever like the stress is, you can alleviate it. Just knowing that if you, I think you mentioned beforehand, but if stress is very normal and it's like kind of an indication that you really do want that job, you really are like, in the right pathway. So if you're not really stressed, then do you really want the job? Is that something that really is motivating you? So that can kind of also serve as a way of okay, I really do want this. So it's like an inclination that you're in the right path.
Right? Like if you don't like have that stress, do you really want that job? Like if you're not being like nervous or excited, because remember, nervousness and excitement often show in the same way.
Mm-hmm.
That you're really nervous when you're actually really excited. So if you don't feel those things and you're like, oh, it was fine, don't go for that job. Like that's a clear sign that says don't go for that job. Don't go for that internship. Don't go for whatever that is. So, yeah, be aware of what's going on in your body, because it's going to tell you even if you don't want to know it.
Yeah. And I think it's important too to remember that like for each of us, stress and anxiety looks very different. It's a very personal experience. And so different things are going to work really well for some people and not at all for other people. And so if you know that you're the type of person who, until you get that application done, you're not going to be able to relax or think about anything else, then maybe the best strategy for you is to sit down one day and just knock it out and get it done with. But if maybe you're the type of person who likes to work through things and really take their time thinking things out and going back and revising, and so maybe for you a better strategy then is to say, man, I'm feeling really stressed about this. I'm going to take a step back, set it down, go on a walk, do something else, read a book, and then come back to this when I'm feeling a little bit more refreshed and revitalized. And that'll help really sustain you throughout the process. And so I think it's really important that as you're going through this, you're also listening to yourself and what your body and your mind are telling you. And so it may be enough to close your eyes for a second and take a deep breath and recenter. And that also might be something that just increases your anxiety and your stress. So it's, I think, really crucial to listen to what your body and your mind are telling you too.
100%. 100%.
Well, we're just about at the end of our time here for this week. Kaylin, thank you so much for being here tonight. It's so wonderful to have your expertise and your insight into this process that is a really challenging process. This tonight, our collaboration with the Career Center was awesome, and we were focusing sort of on the nuts and bolts of the process and immediately in that moment managing stress and anxiety. But we have on November 11th, we have a second part to this series that's looking ahead to the future a little bit more. And that will be hosted by the Career Center. So that's going to be a Zoom call that you can all tune into. We'll have Kaylin and a few other folks from the Career Center and the Office of Health Promotion and Wellness to look at what sort of long-term management of stress and anxiety that comes with searching for a job and long-term career stuff looks like. So I invite you all to come join that. It's going to be a really fantastic event. In preparation for that, we have put together short Google survey that we'd love to get your opinions on and thoughts and questions. So if you have questions that you can think of, whether you can make it to the session or you can't, and you want to get those questions answered, go ahead and scan the QR code in the top corner, and that'll take you to the Google survey that you can fill out beforehand. Kaylin, do you have anything to add about that?
Yeah. No, we're really excited. Please fill out that survey. We would rather like answer the questions that you actually have versus what we're guessing you have. So please fill out the survey. But really, thank you so much for having me tonight. I had a blast talking with you both. And in the meantime, don't hesitate to come visit me or one of our other career advisors. We are happy to be able to help out with the job hunt and interviewing and networking, and be able to make sure that you're successful. Like my job is to make it so that you're successful. So thank you so much.
And don't forget to save HPW to check out the next section of this career project, as well as any other upcoming events. We are on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.